Well, hello everybody. This is Paul, and welcome back to Master the NEC, where we talk about the National Electrical Code and all those little things that make it great and interesting and controversial and gray areas and all that stuff. We love talking about it. Well, in a previous show, I did a little bit of an explanation on insulation resistance testing. I kind of dispelled some of the myths about it when it comes to what values you're expected to see when you might go from an insulated conductor to an insulated conductor. I also dispelled some of the myths that people have about taking connections between insulated conductor and the earth, which is impossible to get any reliable readings. You'll get sporadic readings. You'll get something that you can't really use. And if it was a court of law, I would eat you alive because that information would be thrown out. But we did talk about some areas that you could get some reliable values, and some of the areas that the megameters can actually provide some reliable results. And so they are a very useful tool in measuring the integrity of your electrical system as well as some of your wiring in a perfect condition. And we talked about those perfect conditions. What we did not talk about, and is the genesis of this radio show, is the two types of testing that I recommend, as well as a manufacturer or representing a manufacturer of wire and cable, that we also recommend. If you're going to do the tests, and you're going to do it under the correct conditions, and you're going to do it as we discussed in my previous show on IR testing, then we'll assume all that's taken place and that you know how to do the tests, that you have insulated conductors in a metallic raceway with intimate contact between the insulated conductors, or you have some cable with an aluminum or some kind of copper foil that's in contact with the individual conductors. Or maybe you're doing medium voltage testing where you have an actual conductive core, you have dielectric medium, and then you have an outer band of conductive material that you can actually check for leakage. Actually, to be honest with you, medium voltage is a great opportunity to use megohm meters on that type of product, that's integrity, because typically in those products you have your center core and you have a concentric neutral, or you have other bands of conductive material that you can detect leakage current if the dielectric medium is broken down or there's something wrong with that insulated material. Again, megohm meters are great for motor testing, testing the different windings and things like that for film breakdown, and sometimes the close proximity to very thin insulating material. And it's good for that integrity testing. Okay, because usually you have an insulated component that's weak, and it separates between a grounded component, which allows for a return path, and that's how the meters really function adequately. So we discussed all that in the other radio show. So in this one, I'd like to talk about the two tests that I recommend and kind of give you a little insight on these two tests. Now, the first test that we recommend, again, in a perfect condition, and you're measuring it, and you're going to use the NETA standard to establish that acceptance of 100 megaohms or greater. It doesn't necessarily mean the insulation is bad if you get 2 to 99 megaohms, and we can explain that in more detail. Maybe I'll do a radio show on the 2 to 99 effect, and I'll explain what steps you need to do if you got some low readings and what can cause that low reading, which, is, to be honest with you, is not really low. We see cable of long distances, conductors in metallic raceways, for example, that are going to be readings in the 15 to 20 to 30 megaohms, and that's perfectly acceptable based on its length, its condition, its environment, its temperature, its potential contamination. All of those values remain consistent. There's no rapid dropping over time during your insulation resistant test, so it's a viable insulation. So I think the industry has just totally been misled in how to properly do megohm meter tests, and I think it doesn't do the manufacturers of those equipment justice to know that people out there are expecting the impossible from their machines. They are great machines to do what they're designed to do, but when you try to make them do everything and you don't play any common sense into it, then you got some problems. But anyway, we're going to talk about the type of testing here on this show today. The two tests that we recommend is a spot test and a polarization index test. These are the two tests that really what we recommend if you're going to do the proper testing. Whether you're going to do on-site dunk tank testing on your conductors on the reel, or whether or not you're going to use your insulated wire, electrical wire, or you're going to test cables or what have you. You just have to understand that you need to do it perfectly, and you need to understand its limitations. But let's say that you've assumed all that and you're ready and you've got insulated conductors. Now let's say Let's say we have insulated conductors and we have a metallic raceway, rigid metal conduit, intermediate metal conduit, FMC, some kind of metal raceway, and we have insulated conductors, and all the conductors are insulated. All right, so I'm going to do a test, and I'm going to take my one lead and I'm going to connect to the actual insulated conductor. I'm going to connect to the actual copper or aluminum conductor itself. And then, of course, since it's a metallic raceway, I'm going to connect the other lead to the metallic raceway. Okay, so I'm going to make that connection. Now, I'm going to do this test, and it's going to be basically, it's going to be on 500 volts DC or 1,000 volts DC. Really doesn't matter. I probably would recommend 1,000 volts DC. But again, the actual standard that we follow in the facility is based on UL 44 and 83, depending on whether it's thermoplastic or thermoset. And that calls for a 500 volts DC. So we also on occasion do it at 1,000 volts because we are the manufacturer. We can exceed that value. That's the minimum standard when it comes to the UL testing. Okay, so the more voltage we put through, the more potential pressure we're placing on the conductor and the wire itself, and any potential weakness we might have in an insulation somewhere is going to be raised, and and if it is damaged, we're going to get some kind of readings back depending on whether or not we do a dunk test or we do have our sparker test. So the two tests that we recommend is going to be, again, a spot test, or some people refer to as a 1-minute test, and then we're going to do a polarization index test, which is a 1-minute and 10-minute test. So you're going to run it for 10 minutes, you take a value at 1 minute, and you take a value at 10 minutes. So when we're looking at the spot test, it's 60 seconds. So if you're going to do a dunking method that we talked about in the other video, and all your leads are going to be above the water, you're only going to dunk it down to the outer perimeters so that all the wire is submerged. You let it acclimate to the water for about 60 seconds, let it get all up into the grooves, so that every bit of the wire is actually underwater and submerged. And you have a probe in the tank, which is maybe a copper probe that's down in the tank that's sticking up for you to connect one end of your lead over to it, your negative end over to it, and your positive end could connect to the actual conductive material on the reel. And you do this, and you're going to let it sit for 60 seconds, and then you're going to charge your machine. Doesn't matter which one you use, Megger, Fluke, Hioki, whatever it is. And you initiate the test. And you initiate the test, it's going to build up some type of capacitance. It's going to dissipate off rather sharply, and it's going to stabilize. And then you're going to get a reading. And most of the machines at that point, after the test has been done, it will discharge any capacitance on it to make it a safe condition. So you do that test, and your readings, you're going to take the readings at the 60-second mark. And that is the value that you're going to compare to whether it's the NETA standard. In our case, it's to the UL 83 or 44. And in accordance with UL 2556, which is our test method. If those values meet the minimum acceptable levels for UL, then we continue on with the production, and we actually will take it to either a cabling component, or we will actually take it and shrink wrap it on a reel and send it out to the job site. When you test it out in the field, you're going to do the exact same thing. You take that measurement. Now, as we talked about in previous radio show, if you're going from insulated conductor like A to B, B to C, A to C, and each of those to ground, the problem is you're not going to get a reliable reading between insulated conductors because theoretically they're both insulated. And in order to think that you can send out pressure of voltage to induce current, and that the conductor that's next to it's going to be able to return that current through its insulated medium, is a fallacy. Now, if both conductors are damaged at the exact same point, maybe not so much that you get a continuity reading between them, but the insulation is damaged due to an installation problem, then you might be able to get something through that damaged, weakened insulation from point A to point B through those two conductors and get a reading. So that's really the only viable use of a megometer for that, just to check the integrity of the insulation. I'm really discounting the readings here, and that's where the problem is. People want to look at the readings and understand that these products were not designed to do insulated to insulated conductor. You're just looking for something that plummets, that shows damage. Okay, that's what you're looking for. Now, in our case, we have a metallic raceway, and we have insulated conductors in that metallic raceway, and then we take that reading, and we're going to get a certain amount of respectable current leakage through that insulation, which is acceptable because no insulation is perfect. And then we get a reading back onto that, from that armor, back to our other test lead on our megometer, and that's going to give us a represented value of the insulation resistance. That value is what we're looking for in the field, is trying to get at least 100 mega ohms or higher. Now, what if I get a lower reading between 2 and 99 mega ohms? Then it doesn't necessarily mean that the insulation is bad, okay? Really doesn't mean that. Let me give you another great example that even under the UL 83 standard for thermoplastic, the actual acceptable insulation resistance values can actually be as low as in the kilo ohms value, okay? Doesn't even have to be in the mega ohms value per 1,000 feet. Okay, so keep that in mind. So when you're getting these standards, if I'm getting anything in the mega ohm readings, then that's acceptable insulation value. We have to look at whether or not, and this is what we would investigate with you, is whether or not you have contaminants, you have pulling lubricant, what is the humidity, how did you store it, how was it installed, did it get exposed to moisture, did you get it off the truck when it was delivered right away, how did you store it? We're not trying to put the blame on you. What we're trying to do is narrow down the fact that we tested it in a facility. It had to meet a much higher standard than what's acceptable in the field. And it got shrink wrapped and it got sent out to your location. How did you care for that product? Personally, as a contractor for many, many years, I treated my wire. It doesn't matter that I work for a wire and cable manufacturer. I treated my wire and cable like gold. I didn't leave my non-metallic sheet cable sitting on the back of my work trucks. I didn't leave my reels out where they could be damaged. The insulation could be damaged. I had separate containers that I kept all of my products in. You can call me anal, but that is how I worked my business, because I knew that at the end of the day, when I installed it, that I had to make sure that that system stayed safe, and I didn't want it to question the integrity of the product that I'm putting in. That was just me. You could say whatever you want. You could say it's not realistic. Hey, it's your business. You can do whatever you want. I don't care. I'm just trying to tell you from a manufacturer's perspective, we do all of the litany of tests that are necessary to produce that wire. Now, once it gets to that site, you have to maintain it and take care of it. It is in your responsibility. Most manufacturers will warranty their wire and cable for 1 year, because we can't control what you do with it after that. It just makes sense. All right. So next test we look at, that would be the 60-second test, and actually you get that reading, and we're looking for those values. Again, looking at for values that would be 100 mega ohms or higher, or if it's 2 to 99, then consult the manufacturer of the wire and cable, because they might be able to analyze it out and say, well, this is the reason your values are different. Also, kind of remember that you have adjustments that have to be made for temperature, because that can vastly affect your insulation resistance. High humidity can vastly affect it. All those things, moisture that's in the conduit or tubing or raceway, which is both conduit and tubing are a raceway. There's different values that can represent that you need to be aware of. So you just can't take a reading and just go with it. You have to understand the variables involved in it. It doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. Again, there is occasions where thermoplastic can be in the kilo ohms, and that is considered acceptable based on the manufacturer's minimum acceptance standard. All right, so next test we're talk about that we recommend is the polarization index test. Now, this test is a little more reliable. It's actually my favorite test, or the one that I recommend to give you values, because one thing we're doing is we're noticing the constant rise between a 1-minute value all the way up to a 10-minute value. And then once we have those values, we take the 10-minute value and we divide that into the 1-minute value, or the 60 seconds is divided into the 600 seconds. So the 10-minute goes on top, the 1 minute goes on the bottom, and when you do that division, you're going to get what's called a polarized index ratio. And that's going to be a value, and it's going to be either 1.0 to 2.0 to 3.0 to 4.0. And for a wire and cable industry, with the integrity of the insulation that's made today, we look at 2.0 as being a good average level. There's nothing wrong with it. It's not great, but it's average. It'll be acceptable. Anything that's higher than 2, when you get to 3, that's a good value. That's a good index value. When you get to 4, that's a great index value. Very good integrity. Could be the difference in insulation types, the thicknesses, what's going on, less potential contaminants on it, things like that. So you get a real good dry value rating. And anything that you get over 5.0 is going to be a rather large value, and you don't even have to check anymore beyond that. That is more than excellent. That's perfect. So you do have these varying levels, and sometimes there's people out there or companies that in their mind they think that they got to get some certain level, or they're not going to accept it, or it's bad, or not going to take the risk. That's on you. That is not on the manufacturer. You clearly don't understand that there are different values and different conditions that can change something. And some people will say, well, I've been testing for years, and all I've got is this large value. All I've got is this large value, and I don't understand why I'm getting a low value on this one. Hey, I don't know. Why does a tornado target certain areas? Why does it go to certain paths? It's all random. But how come some areas seem to get hit more than others? I don't know. It just is what it is. In this case, if I get a cable or a conductor that is measuring 75 mega ohms and it seems to stay consistent, then I'm not going to have an issue with it. If I get a value that's going to be 2.5 or 3.5 or 4, and as far as the polarization index value, I'm fine with it. What are you exactly looking for? What are you the expert at, or are you just testing it in the field and going off of your 10, 20, 30 years of experience? Well, hey, I've been doing this for 30 years. I have never, ever gotten reliable readings when I've gone insulation to insulation type testing. Never when it comes to conductors. It just doesn't give me the right values. What are you looking for? That's what I'm talking about. So I'm going to give you an example. I'd had a test where the value at 1 minute was 277,000 mega ohms, and the reality is we're probably talking 2.77 giga ohms here. And then you had a 10-minute value of 2 million value, which I guess we're looking at in tera ohms, I guess. So the value here is what we're talking about. You take the 10-minute value, you divide it over the 1 minute value, and that ended up giving us a polarization index value of 7.0, which I'm not even going to look any further because that is so far beyond a 2.0 value that it's not even worth, it's done. There's a litania test you can do beyond that. There's other testing you can do. There's point testing, where you take multiple readings and you graph it out. It really gets more detailed than you have to do, and the longer that you subject that wire to an elevated level of voltage, it just, I worry more about that over the long-term run. So what I've showed you is 2 tests. We have a 60-second spot test, which you're going to do it for 60 seconds, and you read that reading. And then you've got the polarization index, which is a 1 minute and a 10-minute value recorded, and then you take the 10-minute and you divide it into the 1 minute, or 10 over 1, and that's a 60-second and a 600-second test, and that gives you a polarization index value. And if you get a value at 2.0 or higher, that's acceptable. All right, so that's your baseline. Well, hopefully I've been able to clear up some things with the testing. That's what we recommend, the type of test you do. I encourage you to go listen to our radio show. It's going to be, obviously it's available on our podcasts on our masterthenec.com. You'll get a little index there. You'll see something that looks like a little notepad. You click on it and you can see all of our previous radio shows, all of our podcasts. Feel free to listen to them. Again, remember, you can always recommend future podcasts by sending us an email at info@masterthenec.com. We're more than happy to listen to your inquiries about future podcasts, and we'll try to do a show. Hopefully try to teach you anything. If you question my results here and the information, like I said in my previous podcast, feel free to contact the manufacturers and ask them point blank, is your product designed? Are you guaranteeing me that I can get accurate readings between insulation of one conductor to another conductor inside of a non-metallic product? Make sure you ask the entire question. Make sure you don't ask about these readings when you got a metallic armor or metallic conduit or tubing. You're really talking about the fallacy between insulated conductors and a non-metallic product. If it is a metal raceway and we have insulated conductors in there, then we can get some reliable results. If we have any potential leakage current through weak insulation onto the actual metallic raceway, and then we can get some readings back that we can actually use. But other than that, okay, you really can't get anything reliable for that application. You can detect whether both conductors, say A to B, for example, is damaged at the same point due to some kind of installation damage when you did the actual install. Then yeah, if the continuity won't work, then this might give you more reliable results because it's going to force those two weak insulated components to allow for some kind of return path, and that way you can get some kind of reading on it. Okay, so, and if you have an uninsulated equipment grounding conductor inside of your cable or inside of your raceway, why you would do that in a metallic raceway, but again, okay, code allows you to do it, then you could maybe get some readings as well there between insulated conductors and a bare equipment grounding conductor. Okay, so hopefully I've explained those tests. I went a little longer on this podcast than I wanted to go. We recommend the 60-second spot test, and we also recommend, majority of the time, I recommend the polarization index test, which is a 10-minute and a 1-minute test, all consecutively. You just measure it up to 10 minutes. All right, so hopefully if you have any questions, feel free to email us here at info@masterthenec. Again, you got any questions, email us at that email address as well. Follow us on Twitter. That's @masterthenec. Visit our website at masterthenec.com. Join our message board. There's a link there you can click on. Go to our Facebook page. Just go to Facebook and search for Master the NEC. You will find us. Or if you go to masterthenec.com, you'll see a link at the bottom that links you to our Facebook page. And I thank everybody for the many emails that we get giving us, saying they thanking us for bringing these shows. Hey, we don't charge anything to do this. We do this because we enjoy doing it and helping people out. We're certainly not know-it-alls. I don't know everything. I am certainly no guru. But I do like to bring the knowledge that I have amassed over the 30 years to people, and there's way more people out there that are far more intelligent than me. I ain't delusional to that. But I do thank the individuals that I have walked on their shoulders for years in learning my knowledge and being able to impart it to others and help the industry. I love helping electricians. I love helping inspectors. But I do send a shout out to the individuals that have helped me through the years, have been good friends of mine, maybe some not so much a friend of mine anymore. But I think the individuals like Mike Holt and Mark Odes and Phil Simmons and all of those individuals that through the years have been very inspirational to me and have helped me. And I know there's obviously people in there I've forgotten, the Jeff Sargents of the world, all of those in there that, the Michael Johnston, all of those that I've learned from, Keith Laughlin, all of those that are good friends of mine that have helped me through the years, Charles Miller, who's, I've talked to on the phone many times, all those individuals, I owe a lot of what I've learned, and I'm learning every day. Luckily, I'm still young. I'm 47 years old. I've got another 25 years, hopefully, to be involved in this business, the building industry. I love serving on code-making panels. I love helping to work with the National Electrical Code. I serve on Code-Making Panel 5 and Code-Making Panel 17. I'd like to thank the Aluminum Association for allowing me to serve as their representative on Code-Making 5 and the Copper Association for allowing me to serve on Code-Making Panel 17. It is truly an honor to be on those. I'm very humbled that they would allow me to do that and have a voice. And I am thankful to Encore Wire Corporation and my CEO, Daniel Jones, for allowing me the freedom to be able to do my personal things to help push forward safety in the industry, to help me push forward my love of the electrical industry. So I thank them for doing that to me and allowing me to do what I do without giving me any problems in my daily job. What a wonderful company to work for, and I have wonderful people above me that I work with, and I have a wonderful staff under me that work for me. Kevin Porter, who is the electrical engineer that works under me, he is my right-hand man. Kevin, I love him like a brother. And then we have our two technicians that technically work under us. We have a Codes and Standards NRTL coordinator, David Maxey, and we have a Codes and Standards testing coordinator who does all of my testing on any of the products that we want to test, whether or not it's just for our testing or we're testing for the industry. And we've done all these installation tests, and we've done all this stuff, so this is where our data comes from. And that individual is Daniel Lopez. So I give a shout out to those guys. I would not be here today if for all those individuals who have carried me along and been beneficial in my learning. God bless them and thank them for all of that. So anyway, enough of that. So thanks everybody for listening. Hopefully you got something out of today's episode on testing insulation. Again, if you have any other questions, email us at info@masterthenec.com. God bless. Until next time, peace.